So let's look at the journey again of changing the context. So here we are, we've got the current normal, whatever that is, normal way of thinking, normal way of doing, and something comes along, an event, a situation, a request that requires a change. We typically like to think that, again, from a strictly intellectual, I made my case for the new way of being, and why don't they do that? Okay. Well, here's the thing about the human condition. And when you look at an organization as a living person, the whole collective goes through the exact same process. And it's known as the grief cycle. Okay. And you're familiar with this if you know about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work on death and dying and the grief cycle. But what we never really pay attention to is the natural need, not just tendency, but the actual need for the psyche to prepare itself for something new. And why is that important? Remember, context is the way I identify myself and my reality. So my context, the stories I have that frame my life, that were designed to make me safe and successful, becomes the definition of who I am. Any attempt to change that is in effect an attempt to change a part of me. And if you think about that, that's a part of me that's going to die. You know, there's a Chinese proverb that says, may you die 1,000 deaths before you die. And the notion of that is each death opens you up to a new possibility. But the internal processing of the energy patterns actually goes through this cycle. And unless we consciously allow that and incorporate that in some way into the change process, you're always going to face much more resistance. And later on, I'm going to talk about a ritual that allows for this or helps facilitate this. I mentioned earlier the grief cycle of change. I want to share a story, a ritual that I created for a couple of clients. I've used it. It's worked really well. The purpose of facilitating people through the grief cycle is one of acknowledging what's being let go. I find that if I allow them to verbalize how has it served us? How has this orientation brought us to where we are today? And then have them begin to articulate what it's like without it, like the sadness or the sense of loss, or I'm going to miss this activity or that activity if we don't have it. So again, giving space for them to verbalize it, and then encourage the feeling tones behind it. Right? Recognizing that if they're angry, okay, just name it. I really experience your anger right now, and that's okay. I'd be angry. I'm angry too, or whatever the phases that they're in, let it come out. There's always a reason for why we're letting go. So there's the honoring of why it serves, but there's also the flip side of it. Like it's had problems. And so bringing that out and allowing that to be discussed opens up to how it might free us and how it might move us forward and how it might open space going forward. And then, of course, there's always ending with a deep sense of appreciation for how this got us here. I'll give you one example of where I used it. The owner-founder passed away, and the owner-founder was really a very benevolent dictator. And basically, the whole organization was oriented around just doing what they were told. And the new CEO came in and obviously wanted to manage more by objective and empower them more and have them make decisions. So we actually took them through a ritual where I started off just almost following this exact same example, where it's like, this is the way it used to be under the old owner-founder, under the old leader. And what did you like about it? What was good about it? And we flip charted it all. And then after they got that out and how it was, and we really had, I said, but weren't there's also some issues around that? I mean, didn't it have some downside or limitations? And they got into talking about that. And I said, okay, so here's some negative aspects of the old way and some positive aspects of the old way. What do we want to bring forward? And how do we begin to shift the negatives of the old way, flip it over into positives for the new way? And we took them through that kind of literally a ritual of that type of conversation. And the feedback I got from the CEO a week later said the energy in the organization had completely shifted from stuck in the old and wanting to move into the new and not being able to get through it. By going through this letting go process, it completely shifted the energy, and they were able to start implementing a whole bunch of new stuff.